Welcome to the wonderful world of drawing. This video drawing workshop is a culmination of 20 years of teaching high-level drawing skills to people who have never learned to draw. What is included in this workshop are the highlights from my intensive 5-day drawing seminar, fondly known as my killer class. The class has changed and evolved over the years as I learned from students which exercises and teaching techniques really work. The question often comes up, what is the point of learning to draw? One answer, of course, is just for the pleasure of it. Nearly everyone remembers drawing as a child. Some people recall the sadness they felt on giving up drawing, usually around age 10 to 12, because they couldn't figure out how to make things look right. And indeed, it's almost impossible to teach yourself how to draw. Like reading, drawing seems to require instruction. Given good instruction, however, I firmly believe that anyone can learn to draw well, just as we all believe that given good instruction, everyone can learn to read. A special talent for art, like a special talent for reading, is not a deciding factor. Perhaps a more important reason is that drawing, like reading, improves thinking. Visual perceptual skills, which you will learn in this video, are critical to creative thinking and problem solving. I think it's not an accident that when we finally understand something, we often say, now I see it. Now I can see the whole picture. Let me suggest how to use this video. The workshop is divided into 7 lessons. Each lesson will list the materials you need, then introduce you to a drawing concept through theory, demonstration, and your own drawing. Once you've completed your drawing exercises, you can measure your progress as I critique 2 of my previous students' work. After you have watched this introduction, you may want to preview the entire video and then concentrate on the lessons one by one. Or, if you like surprises, you may prefer to proceed one lesson at a time. This is entirely up to you. I do strongly recommend, however, that for each lesson, you watch the video up to the instruction telling you, stop the video. Then, after finishing your drawing, be sure to return to the video lesson for critiques and conclusions. And of course, feel free to review the instruction as much as you need. For your convenience, I've put together this portfolio containing all the tools and drawing materials you'll need for this video drawing workshop. Over the years, one of the most successful parts of my seminars has been comparing before and after drawings at the end of the lessons. Let me show you some of these drawings. They are all self-portraits, one drawn before instruction and one after. You'll notice that Evangelina's pre-instruction self-portrait is very small and tentative, while her self-portrait after instruction reflects her newfound artistic self-confidence. Cindy made perhaps the greatest advance of all. She really believed she could never learn to draw, yet look at what she accomplished. Yvonne also made a tremendous advance in her drawing skills. The hat and scarf nicely frame the beautifully drawn face. As with these students, it will be important to have real evidence of your own progress. Before you watch the rest of this video, therefore, you need to make a record of your present drawing skill. I know how difficult this is, but just do it. You will do one pre-instruction drawing, a self-portrait. You will need these materials: the small pad of drawing paper, the number 2 writing pencil, the pencil sharpener, the drafting tape, the mirror, the drawing board, and about 30 minutes of drawing time, more if you need it. For your self-portrait, first place a chair in front of a wall and tape your mirror at the correct height to reflect your head. Sit at arm's length from the mirror. Lean your board up against the wall, resting the bottom of the board on your lap, and draw your self-portrait. When you've finished, date and sign the drawing. Stop the video and do your...
So I wanted to ask you all, do you want to stop and do the pre-instruction drawing for a moment, or would you like to preview the whole video as she suggested? Because what we could do, you know, thinking about this, my brain's always thinking, how could we structure it? We could do a preview this week, and then I could schedule a few chunks where we do like lessons 1 and 2 together, 3 and 4 together, and then work through them and chunk them. So really the choice is up for the class, but I'm okay with just watching through the entire video, as she did suggest that you could do, to see what it's all about. Then you have more time to gather all the supplies if you want specific things. Because I will tell you, I did find everything on Amazon. So is that who would like to just watch it all the way through?
I would. Kay Lake.
Okay, awesome. All right, well, that sounds like that's what the majority would prefer. So let's go ahead and we'll do a all the way watch through, and then I will schedule additional classes where I'll kind of, as we're watching, decide how to chunk it. And we can do...
that sounds great. This
Perfect.
is Susan, and I'm going to have to bow out. I've got vertigo to kill today, and I'm not doing it. Yeah, it's just been crappy. So I'll catch up with you guys later.
Feel better, Susan. This will be recorded, and yeah, catch up. No problem. Take care. No. Okay, well, we'll go ahead and just continue watching, and at any time, if anyone wants to pause it, I'll still do like a little intermission halfway through, because it is still, you know, a lengthy video.
It's a good idea, I think, so we're not rushed. You know?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. And then what I'm going to do is, as she's talking, I'm going to write down the length of time she recommends for each activity. Like the pre-assessment right there, she recommended 30 minutes. And so I can even do our sessions, you know, they can be longer than an hour. That's no problem. So at the end, we can just kind of chat, and we'll just figure out what works best for everybody. But yeah, I like this too. Cool.
Great.
All right, here we go.
Your pre-instruction drawing. Well, we have passed the worst part of these lessons. I wrote my master's thesis on the subject anxiety in drawing, and I know that having to draw without instruction causes anxiety to go sky high. But it's really useful to have a pre-instruction drawing as concrete evidence of your achievement later on. Now, let's look at some real examples of the kind of progress previous students have made with the same kind of instruction you are about to experience. Let me introduce you to our 2 students whose progress we will track throughout the video. First is Laura, a 16-year-old who loved to draw, but wanted to know how to make things look real. As you see, her pre-instruction self-portrait, charming as it is highly stylized and symbolic. She felt stuck at this point in her drawing and yearned for the skills of realism. Much as I like the drawing, it's really unfair not to teach young people the skills they want at this age. It would be like not teaching correct speech because we find the inventive language of childhood so adorable. Next is Mark. He is a sheet metal fabricator in his mid-40s who had become interested in crafts and felt he needed some drawing skills. Mark's pre-instruction drawing certainly shows his lack of training, but when I saw how well he had observed certain details, the ears, for example, I had no doubt that he would do well in drawing. I hope that seeing these examples is encouraging and that you look at your own pre-instruction drawing with new eyes. Did you feel like Mark, that your hand had a will of its own and drew symbols that you knew only vaguely resembled your perceptions? This tyranny of the symbol system explains why people untrained in drawing continue to produce childish drawings right into adulthood and even old age. What you will learn from me is how to set aside your symbol system and accurately draw what you see. Now put your pre-instruction drawing into your portfolio for safekeeping. Do not look at it again until after you have completed my course and have learned to see and draw. Then you will have your own before and after drawings to show your family and friends. In the first lesson, we will look at how the brain is involved in learning to draw and the kinds of conflicts that can occur between seeing and believing. In doing your pre-instruction drawing, you saw how the symbols memorized during childhood rush in, overwhelming any attempt to draw what you really see. When you think of drawing an eye, you probably think of this. In this lesson, I will explain why this happens. We will briefly explore the two different modes of the human brain and how they affect drawing. One mode is verbal and the other is visual. A side benefit of learning to draw is getting to know your own brain a bit better. For example, how for you these two modes compete and cooperate. I use the terms L mode and R mode to designate two ways of knowing and seeing, the verbal analytic mode and the visual perceptual mode, no matter where they are located in the individual brain. You are probably aware of these different characteristics. L mode is a step-by-step style of thinking, using words, numbers, and other symbols. L mode strings things out in sequences, like words in a sentence. R mode, on the other hand, uses visual information and processes not step by step, but all at once, like recognizing the face of a friend. Most activities require both modes, each contributing its special functions. But a few activities require mainly one mode without interference from the other. Drawing is one of these activities. Learning to draw, then, turns out not to be, quote, learning to draw. Paradoxically, learning to draw means learning to make a mental shift from L mode to R mode. That's what a person trained in drawing does, and that is what you are about to learn. Incidentally, this ability to see things differently has many uses in life aside from drawing, not the least of which is creative problem solving. Here is a quick exercise designed to illustrate the mental conflict that can occur between L mode and R mode. This is a famous optical illusion drawing called vase faces because it can be seen as either two facing profiles or as a symmetrical vase in the center. Take the vase faces image from your portfolio. Your job, of course, is to complete the second profile, which will inadvertently complete the symmetrical vase in the center. For this exercise, you will need the copy of Vase Faces for right-handers, or if you're left-handed, the Vase Faces for left-handers, the number 2 writing pencil, the pencil sharpener, the drawing board, the drafting tape, and about 5 minutes of drawing time. First, redraw the profile already printed on the Vase Faces drawing. Just take your pencil and go over the lines, naming the parts as you go like this: forehead, nose, upper lip, lower lip, chin, and neck. Then go to the other side and start to draw the missing profile that will complete the symmetrical vase. When you get to about here, perhaps, you may begin to experience some confusion or conflict. The purpose of this exercise is for you to self-observe, how do I solve the problem? Stop the video and begin the Vase Faces exercise. Did you experience some conflict during the drawing? This Vase Faces exercise helps each person to experience in their own minds the mental crunch that can occur in drawing. Most people experience some confusion or conflict while drawing the second profile. Let me tell you why this mental conflict happens. First, I ask you to name each feature, thus strongly plugging in the verbal system of the brain. Then I ask you to complete the second profile and, simultaneously, the symmetrical vase. This can only be done by shifting to the visual, spatial mode of the brain. The difficulty of making that mental shift causes a feeling of conflict and confusion, and perhaps even a momentary mental paralysis. Did you feel it? The solution to the conflict, of course, is to draw just what you see without naming the parts. Many people actually say to themselves, don't think about the names of the features, and this helps them to escape the conflict. Let's look at our two students' Vase Faces drawings. Laura, our 16-year-old, sailed through this. She said she concentrated on the shape in the middle and didn't think about drawing the profile, one of the many solutions to this exercise. Mark also did well with this exercise. He had a little crunch in this area, as you can see. Now you will do another exercise, this one designed to remove mental conflict, just the opposite of the last exercise. Upside down drawing makes drawing easy, even for people completely untrained in drawing. For reasons that are still unclear, the brain, when presented an upside down image like this, makes an immediate and massive shift to a different way of processing. It seems as though the dominant verbal system says, in effect, I don't do upside down. It's too hard to name things that way. Well, fine, that's just what we want. Right side up, however, the name comes immediately to mind. Here is an example of a student's drawing done right side up. Now, in contrast, here's the same student's drawing done upside down. Looking at this example, you are probably wondering how he was able to copy this drawing so well while it was upside down and not when it was right side up. Because, upside down, he didn't know what he was drawing. He simply drew what he saw just as he saw it, one of the most important keys to drawing well. Now, let's have you try it. The tools and materials you will need are Picasso's drawing of the composer Igor Stravinsky, the drawing board, the number 2 writing pencil, the pencil sharpener, the small drawing pad, and about an hour of drawing time. Turn the Picasso drawing upside down. Your copy will also be done upside down, but remember, don't turn your drawing right side up until you have finished. Work your way through the drawing, fitting the parts together as you go. I recommend that you move from line to adjacent line, space to adjacent shape. What you do not want to do is to name the parts as you are drawing. Draw just what you see. When you come to parts that seem to force their names on you, like the HANDS and the FACE, try to focus on these parts just as shapes. As you begin your upside down drawing, try to finish without interrupting your drawing time. At some point, the drawing will seem to become very interesting, like a puzzle with the parts coming together in a most satisfying way. At that point, you will have shifted to R mode. Stop the video and begin your upside down drawing. Now, turn your drawing right side up. I can confidently predict that you will be pleased, especially if you have thought in the past that you would never be able to draw. Let's see how our 2 students did on this exercise. Laura had very few problems with this exercise. Some erased corrections here and there, but that's good. The eraser is a valued tool in drawing. A main point, the hard part of the Picasso drawing is the foreshortened legs. Neither Laura nor Mark had trouble with these parts, no doubt because, upside down, they didn't know what they were drawing. Mark's line is a very slow line, feeling its way along the edge. The line becomes darker where Mark feels some uncertainty, as here and here. Again, all line styles are valued, one not more than another. The line style you used in this exercise is probably your style. Of course, you can try out other line styles, but you want to value your own expressive line. Remember that in drawing, you are always seeking yourself, your way of creatively expressing yourself. Since we can't turn the world upside down, this workshop will teach you how an artist sees when drawing right side up. In the next lesson, I'll introduce you to the 5 basic skills of drawing. Drawing is made up of 5 component skills that, with practice, meld together into a smoothly working global skill. Other global skills also have component parts. For example, in learning to drive a car, you must learn to start the car, to steer, to use the brakes, and to follow the rules of the road. Once you have learned the components, they become integrated into a global skill. You are now on automatic, just driving without thinking about the separate parts. The same holds true for drawing. Fortunately for someone learning how to draw, there are only 5 basic skills. Once you've learned all 5, and with practice, you will soon be just drawing. This mnemonic was invented by a high school teacher. It will really help you to remember the skills. And we'll be talking about these skills throughout the workshop. First, the perception of edges, called line or contour drawing. Second, the perception of spaces, in drawing called negative spaces. Third, the perception of angles and proportions, known as perspective and proportion. Fourth, the perception of lights, that's the sun, and shadows, sometimes called shading. Fifth, the perception of the whole, the gestalt, the thingness of the thing, the personality of the thing or person you're drawing. I will teach you the first 4 skills, but the 5th doesn't require instruction. Understanding the gestalt just happens as a result of learning to draw. You begin to see the way an artist sees. In this lesson, we'll take up the first of the 5 basic skills, the perception of edges. This is not a new skill for most people. We tend to see the edges of things from childhood onward. Now, however, you'll be slowing down to see and draw very complicated edges. For this exercise, you will need the drawing board, the small drawing pad, the number 2 writing pencil, the pencil sharpener, the drafting tape, an alarm clock or kitchen timer, and about 15 minutes of uninterrupted time. Look at the palm of your hand. Bring your fingers and thumb together to create a mass of wrinkles in your palm. Those wrinkles are what you are going to draw, all of them. I can almost hear you saying, "Are you joking?" And forget that. Set the timer for 5 minutes. In this way, you won't have to keep track of time. That's an L mode function. Sit in a comfortable position with your drawing hand on your taped down paper, holding the pencil and ready to draw. Then face all the way around in the opposite direction, keeping your hand with the pencil on the drawing paper like this. Gaze at a single wrinkle in your palm. Begin to draw just that edge. As your eyes track the edge very slowly, 1 millimeter at a time, your pencil will record your perceptions. Your hand and pencil will function like a seismograph, recording every detail of what you are seeing. Most important, you must continue to draw until the timer signals you to stop. Do not turn and look at your drawing. If you experience painful objections from your verbal mode, like, "Why am I doing this? This is really stupid," or "It won't even be a good drawing because I can't see what I'm doing," try your best to keep on drawing. Soon, this mental chatter will cease, and you'll find yourself becoming intensely interested in the complexity of the edges you see in your palm, and intensely aware of the beauty of that complex perception. When that change takes place, you will have shifted to visual mode, or R mode, and again, you will be, quote, really drawing. Turn and look at your drawing only after the timer signals 5 minutes. Stop the video and begin drawing the wrinkles in your hand. In looking at your drawing, perhaps you will say, "What a mess." But look more closely. You will see that these marks are strangely beautiful. Of course, they do not represent the hand, only its details and details within details. These are complex edges drawn from actual perceptions. When looking at one of these drawings, a friend of mine remarked, "No one in their left mind would do a drawing like that." Let's see how our two students did. Laura had a bit of trouble slowing down enough for this exercise. In her second drawing, however, she began to see wonderfully complicated edges. Mark actually liked this exercise. Many students do not. His drawing certainly demonstrates how much there is to see if we can slow down enough to really see what is out there. Students often wonder why this exercise is important. The reason is that it causes L mode to drop out, enabling you to see and draw without the prejudgment, "It's only a bunch of wrinkles." Also, instead of naming and quickly dismissing the complex wrinkles, you stay with them and see them in a new way, how complicated and beautiful they are. Odd as this exercise may seem, I can assure you that it will permanently change your ability to perceive. From this point onward, you will begin to see in the way an artist sees. Now, we'll look at complicated edges in a different way, edges that translate the three-dimensional world into a drawing. One of the great mysteries for beginning drawing students is how to convincingly represent a three-dimensional object on a flat two-dimensional sheet of paper. For example, the idea of drawing a hand like this one with the fingers coming toward you baffles students. In the next exercise, you will learn to create realistic drawings like this that look three-dimensional. For this, understanding the picture plane is essential. In these lessons, you will work with the clear plastic picture planes with viewfinders painted on them. You will need both sizes, the small and the large. The picture plane is a mental concept. See this in your mind's eye. An imaginary, transparent plane, like a framed window that is always hanging out in front of the artist's face, always parallel to the artist's two eyes. If the artist turns, the plane also turns. What the artist sees, quote, on the plane, actually extends back into the distance. But the plane enables the artist to, quote, see the scene as though it were magically smashed flat on the back of the clear glass plane, like a photograph in a sense. Put another way, the 3D image behind the framed window is converted to a 2D flat image on the plane. The artist then, quote, copies what is seen on the plane onto the drawing paper. This trick of the artist's mind, so difficult to describe, is even more difficult for beginning students to discover on their own. To further help beginners in drawing, you'll notice that your picture plane viewfinder is marked with two grid lines or crosshairs that represent vertical and horizontal. These are the two constants on which the artist depends. Now, just for practice, hold up your picture plane viewfinder and, looking around, choose a view that you like, framed by the viewfinder. Then imagine that you are drawing on the picture plane exactly what you see on the plane. Remember, all the angles, sizes, spaces, and relationships will be just what you see on the picture plane. At this point, I can put into words for you a working definition of what drawing is. That is, realistic drawing. Drawing is copying what you see flattened on the picture plane. That's what you will be doing in the next exercise. Now, let's put this new idea to work. For your next drawing, you will need the small or large picture plane viewfinder, whichever best fits the size of your hand, the felt tip pen, and about 5 minutes of uninterrupted time. First, rest your hand on the edge of a table with your fingers pointing toward your face like this. Again, this is the foreshortened view, a view that most beginning students regard as a pose too difficult to draw. But try this. Uncap your felt tip marker. Next, balance your picture plane viewfinder on the tips of your fingers like this. Then, take your marker, close one eye, and begin to draw the edges of your hand just as you see them on the picture plane. You can start anywhere. Be sure not to move your hand or your head, and be sure you keep one eye closed. Your job is to draw the edges just as you see them, with as much detail as possible. Here is my finished drawing on plastic. Note that the felt tip marker will make a line that is rough and somewhat shaky. Stop the video and begin drawing your hand on the picture plane viewfinder. Now, place your drawing on plastic on a plain sheet of paper so that you can see what you have drawn. You will be amazed. By drawing the contours just as you saw them, you have convincingly depicted your three-dimensional hand on a two-dimensional surface. Here are our two students' drawings on plastic. Laura's drawing is strongly foreshortened, with the fingers coming toward the viewer. This was Laura's second try. She decided the first was not complicated enough because she started with her hand in a flat position. Clearly, Mark was interested in the small negative spaces between the fingers. The foreshortening of the fingernails is especially good. In the next lesson, you will turn this drawing on plastic into a drawing on paper. In Lesson 2, while drawing the wrinkles in your palm, you experienced intense, sustained perception. You also learned how to do a drawing that looks three-dimensional using the picture plane. Now, in Lesson 3, we'll use what you've learned about edges, and you'll do your first real drawing. Let me show you some drawings of hands. Notice how three-dimensional they look. This comes from copying the edges, now flattened on the picture plane, onto the paper. In this lesson, I'll also teach you how to add a little light and shadow to increase the illusion of 3D. But I'll save the real instruction on that skill for a later lesson. In ordinary life, we see everything with two eyes open. This is called binocular vision. It allows us to see the world as three-dimensional. But if you close one eye, you will see a slightly different image. Your view is now two-dimensional or flat. To demonstrate that each eye sees a different view, try this. Place your hand in front of your face, even with your nose. Look at your hand, first with one eye, then the other. Did you see the two views? If we eliminate one of these views, the image is no longer three-dimensional, but flat, like a photograph, suited to the paper we draw on. Drawing means drawing from a single view. Recall from the last lesson that when you drew your hand directly on the plastic picture plane, I asked you to keep your hand still and your head still in order to see one view only on the picture plane. For the same reason, to see one view only, you kept one eye closed. You may be wondering, is it always necessary to close one eye while drawing? Not always, but most artists do quite a lot of one eye closing. This technique is especially helpful when a subject is close by. Now you're ready to draw your hand. The tools you will need for this exercise are the small drawing pad, the number 2 writing pencil or a drawing pencil, the pencil sharpener, the white plastic eraser, the small or large picture plane viewfinder with your drawing on it, the small or large template, the graphite stick, paper towels or napkins, and about an hour of uninterrupted time. For this drawing, you will sit in a normal position. You will be able to glance from your hand to your drawing so that you can see both the drawing as it progresses and your hand with all its details at the same time. First, however, draw a format on your drawing paper using the template that matches the viewfinder you used for the felt tip drawing. Next, tone your paper with your graphite stick like this. Wear down one of the sharp edges of your graphite to prevent streaking. Lightly rub the rounded edge of the graphite stick on the paper. Then, use a paper towel or tissue to rub the tone to an even silvery gray. This is called setting a ground. Next, draw the crosshairs on your toned format using the template to locate the crosshairs. Place your drawing on plastic on a piece of white paper so you can see the drawing. Beside it, place your paper with the toned ground. Start by transferring key points from the drawing on plastic to your drawing paper. This will be a great help in getting started. Your toned ground is divided into quarters by the crosshairs. Say to yourself, on this quarter, where does this point fall? On the next quarter, where is this point? And so on. Next, you're going to copy the drawing on your plastic picture plane onto your drawing paper. Recall our definition of drawing: copying what is seen flattened on the picture plane. Go from edge to adjacent edge, using the drawing on plastic as a guide, as well as the transferred points. An important point: you can estimate the angle of any edge by comparing it to the crosshairs. Check these angles in the drawing on plastic that you did earlier. Look also at the shapes of the spaces around the hand. This rough copy will give you a good start in the drawing, allowing you to focus on the complex details in your hand. Next, reposition your posing hand and, closing one eye, focus on a point on some edge in your hand. Any edge will do to make a start. Gaze at this point in preparation to draw. This will start the mental shift to R mode and help quiet any mutterings from L mode. Try to see these relationships of the edges by imagining a picture plane hovering over your hand with its helpful crosshairs and the edge of the format to guide you. Just as you did in your drawing of the wrinkles in your hand, try to perceive and record all of the slight undulations of each edge. Use your eraser whenever needed, even to make tiny adjustments in the line. If you see spaces between the fingers, use that information as well. How wide is that space compared to the width of that shape? You might want to erase all the spaces around the hand and fingers. This helps to pop the hand into focus as a 3D shape. Remember, we are not naming things like fingernails, fingers, thumb, and palm. They are all just edges, spaces, shapes, and relationships. Be sure also to keep one eye closed at least a good portion of the time. Your hand is quite close to your eyes, and the binocular disparity can confuse you with two images. When you come to parts that impose their names on you, fingernails, for example, try to escape the words. One good strategy is to focus on the shapes of the flesh around the fingernails. These shapes share edges with the fingernails. Therefore, if you draw the shapes around the nails, you will have also drawn the edges of the fingernails, but you'll get both right. In fact, if mental conflict sets in over any part of the drawing, move to the next adjacent space or shape, remembering the shared edge concept. Then later return with new eyes to the part that seemed difficult. See that streak of light there on the thumb? Erase that shape. See that cast shadow under the thumb? Darken in that shape with your pencil. Finally, when the drawing begins to become intensely interesting, like a complicated and beautiful jigsaw puzzle gradually taking shape under your pencil, you will be really drawing. Stop the video and begin the drawing of your hand. You have just finished your first real drawing, and I feel confident that you are pleased with the results. The miracle of drawing is that because you drew what you saw on the flat picture plane, your drawing appears authentically three-dimensional. Let's look at our two students' beautiful drawings. First is Laura's drawing. She is so young that her hands are very smooth, probably harder to draw than older hands with lots of wrinkles. But because Laura paid close attention to the exact slight undulations of the edges, her drawing is very convincingly three-dimensional. Notice that by close observation only of the edges, spaces, lights, and shadows, Laura's drawing also expresses the tension required of the muscles, tendons, and bones to hold that position. Mark's drawing is quite dramatic. The area where the thumb meets the palm is especially well drawn. You can almost feel the thickness of the palm, and the spaces between the fingers are very effective. Before we move on to the next step, think back on your mental state during the drawing of your hand. Did you lose track of time? Did the drawing at some point become interesting, even fascinating? Were you able to escape language while you were drawing? I hope you're learning to make an easy mental shift to R mode. In the next lesson, we'll take a closer look at the second skill of drawing, negative spaces. Now Now that you've learned to see and draw edges and use the picture plane, we can proceed to the second basic skill of drawing, negative spaces. But first, let's review the 5 basic skills of drawing. Remember, you will use all of these skills in nearly every drawing. Let's see how they work together in a single drawing. The perception of edges, usually called line or contour drawing. The perception of spaces, in drawing called negative spaces. The perception of relationships, of angles and proportions. The perception of lights and shadows, often called shading. And the perception of the whole, that is, the gestalt, the thingness of the thing. Why is using negative spaces one of the secrets of drawing? Well, when a beginner in drawing tries to draw a chair, that person knows too much, in an L mode sense, about chairs. For example, that seats have to be big enough to hold a person, that chair legs are usually all the same length, and that chairs sit on a flat surface. This knowledge does not help, and in fact can greatly hinder drawing a chair. Visually, that is, as seen on the flattened picture plane, a chair seat may appear not nearly wide enough to sit on. The legs may appear to be all different lengths. What is a person to do? The answer, don't draw the chair at all. Instead, draw the negative spaces of the chair. Here, the chair is the positive form, and the wall behind, the floor beneath, and the spaces within the chair are the negative spaces. Here's a drawing of only the negative spaces, as though the chair has disappeared. But because the negative spaces share edges with the chair, we can still, quote, see the chair. It might seem surprising that focusing on negative spaces will improve your drawing. But this is another paradox of drawing and may help to explain why drawing is so difficult to learn without instruction. So much of drawing, including negative spaces, would never occur to anyone in their left mind. Negative spaces are important for 2 main reasons. First, using negative spaces makes drawing easier because you don't know anything in a verbal sense about these spaces. You can therefore escape language, see the spaces clearly, and draw them correctly. Second, strong use of negative spaces improves composition by unifying the spaces and the shapes. If negative spaces are given the same importance as the positive forms, all parts of the drawing work together to create a unified image. Your next drawing is simply a chair. Any chair will do, an office chair, plain straight chair, or stool. For this exercise, you will need the graphite stick, several paper towels or paper napkins, the large drawing pad, the small picture plane viewfinder, the felt tip pen, drafting tape, the drawing board, drawing pencils, the pencil sharpener, the white plastic eraser, the gray kneaded eraser, 2 chairs, one to sit on and one to lean your drawing board on, and about an hour of uninterrupted time or more if possible. Place the chair you have chosen to draw against a fairly simple background, perhaps a room corner or a wall with a door. Set yourself up to draw in front of your still life, using one chair to sit in and another chair to lean your drawing board against. Sit at a comfortable distance of about 8 to 10 feet from the chair you are about to draw. The first step is to draw a format on your drawing paper. This time, use the outside edge of your picture plane viewfinder. Next, tone your paper with your graphite stick. Then, lightly draw the horizontal and vertical crosshairs on your toned paper. Hold the viewfinder in front of your face, close one eye, and moving the viewfinder forward or backward, frame the chair in a composition that you like. If you wish, the chair can nearly touch the format so that it pretty much fills up the space. Hold the viewfinder very still. Now, focus on a single negative space defined by the chair, perhaps the space between two back slats. With one eye closed, focus on that particular negative space. We'll call that your basic unit. Keep your eye fastened on your basic unit until it pops into focus as a shape. This always takes a moment, perhaps it's Elmo's protesting time. Next, use your felt tip marker to draw your basic unit on the picture plane. The next step is to transfer your basic unit to the paper you have toned, using your crosshairs to place it and size it correctly. In this drawing, you will need to scale up your basic unit because your toned format is larger than the viewfinder opening. Scaling up is not difficult, however, because both formats are the same proportion width to length. Watch as I make the transfer. Looking at your basic unit on the picture plane, say to yourself, relative to the crosshairs, where is that edge? How far over from that side? From the crosshair? From the bottom? If there are angles, assess them relative to the crosshairs. These approximations will help you transfer your basic unit with surprising accuracy to your toned paper. Once that first shape is drawn, all else follows with the beautiful logic of drawing. Remember to focus only on the shapes of the negative spaces, moving from space to adjacent space. Try also to avoid talking to yourself or questioning why things are the way they are. Draw just what you see. Remember that by drawing the edges of the spaces, you are also drawing the edges of the chair. These are shared edges. Continue working your way through the drawing, searching out relationships, both angles relative to vertical and horizontal, and proportions relative to each other. If you talk to yourself at all during the drawing, use only the language of relationships. How wide is this space compared to my basic unit? What is this angle compared to horizontal? How far does that space extend relative to the whole edge of the format? Soon you will be really drawing. Again, the drawing will begin to seem like a fascinating puzzle, the parts fitting together in an entirely satisfying way. After drawing the spaces of the chair, you may want to, quote, work up the drawing a bit by using your eraser to remove the tone in some areas, perhaps erasing the negative spaces and leaving the chair in tone. Or you could erase the chair, leaving the negative spaces in tone. If you see shadows on the floor or on the wall behind, you may want to add them to your drawing, perhaps adding in some tone with your pencil or erasing out the negative spaces of the shadows. Stop the video and begin.
I thought I'd pause just for a minute to just say welcome if you just joined us. We had decided at the start of the video to just view everything today, and then we're going to chunk the little lessons that she's teaching and revisit them and actually try them together. So just wanted to share that with you. Does anyone feel like they need a break, or are you feeling good?
I have a question.
Yeah.
That picture plane, is that kind of like grid drawing in a way?
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what it's like. It's just
Okay.
instead of having so many boxes, you just have quadrants with the vertical and the horizontal. And that's just what I got this plexiglass for. So I just bought this on Amazon, and then with a marker, you can just draw on it and make your own. So you don't have to buy anything fancy. I don't remember how much this was. It was in a pack of 5. It wasn't very expensive though. So I could make 2 different sizes, the big one, the small one if I wanted to. But yeah, good question, Lori.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Is the lady that's doing the video, is she the author of the book?
Correct. Yes, Betty
Oh.
Edwards. Yes.
I have that book, but I need to read it.
Yeah, the book is really good. And, the book is a good accompaniment or to accompany this video too, but you don't have to have the book. That's one of the things the video said is you're capable of doing everything without it. And I've been taking notes this whole time too, like for example, that Picasso drawing for the upside down drawing, she didn't include that in the supply list. So I'll get that so you can download it. So everything she's listing, I'm noting what's not on the supply list so I can make sure you have everything you need. I'm noting the times that it takes to do each thing. Some things I don't know that will take as long as she thinks it's going to take necessarily, especially for us as adults. Sometimes I think teenagers take a little bit longer to do things maybe, but we can discuss that. So yeah, I've got a whole bunch of notes going here for sure.
I stopped the video only because I just moving around. My mother told me I was a wiggle worm from day one, so.
No, I love it. I tell my high schoolers, like, if I'm chatting and you need to go stand up in the back, like, do it. Do what you got to do. I think that's great. So yeah, whatever makes you feel comfortable. Some people have a hard time sitting. I think that's maybe my problem is I can sit too long.
Oh, when I first started drawing, my friend told me exactly about the book.
Yeah.
And about the negative spaces.
Yeah.
And so it's a very good reminder for me
Yeah.
to do it that way instead of the way I choose to do it, but doing things upside down. Everything she said just came right back.
That's awesome.
So,
yeah. Good. Good. I'm glad. Cool. Well, yeah, I'll just keep going, but if anyone needs me to pause it for any reason, feel free to hop on and I can pause it. No problem.
Thank you.
Of course. All right, here we go.
Your negative space drawing. I feel confident that your drawing will please you. No matter how mundane the subject, a chair, an egg beater, can opener, a negative space drawing seems beautiful. Now let's look at our 2 students' drawings. Laura had very few problems with this drawing, and in fact finished rather quickly, as is her style. I must be sure to mention that long, slow drawing is valued, and rapid drawing is valued, and drawing at a medium pace is valued. There is no special advantage to any of these styles. Laura's drawing is a negative space drawing, but because she had time, she, quote, worked up the chair to a high degree of finish. The shadows, also drawn in negative space, are particularly beautiful. Mark's interest in negative spaces, which showed up in his hand drawing, was very helpful in this, quote, difficult view of a chair. I hope that you too like negative spaces. They make drawing easy. Up to this point, you have learned to use the perception of edges and of negative spaces. In Lesson 5, we'll explore the perception of relationships of angles and proportions, and we'll work with proportion and perspective. In this lesson, you will learn how to draw in perspective and in proportion. This skill is also called sighting relationships. You actually used sighting in the last lesson in your negative space drawing of a chair. By simply looking at the chair, you estimated its angles and proportions. This was probably one of the most difficult parts of the drawing. But now you will learn to use special tools that make sighting easier and more accurate. Let's review all 5 of the basic skills now. Remember, you will use all of these new skills in nearly every drawing. Let's see how they work in a single drawing. The perception of edges, usually called line or contour drawing. The perception of spaces, in drawing called negative spaces. The perception of relationships, of angles and proportions. The perception of lights and shadows, often called shading. And the perception of the whole, that is, the gestalt, the thingness of the thing. I will teach you the first 4 skills, but the 5th doesn't require instruction. Understanding the gestalt just happens as a result of learning to draw. You begin to see the way an artist sees. The 3rd skill, the perception of relationships, presents a real challenge, but it's important not to skip over it. Sighting relationships is essential to the larger global skill of drawing. Your subject for this exercise is an open doorway, indoors or out. Sighting, however, is not just used for perspective drawings. Every drawing you do, whatever the subject, requires the skill you will learn in this lesson. It's important for you to understand that drawing, that is, realistic drawing of a perceived subject, is always the same task, always requiring the same 5 basic skills: edges, spaces, relationships, lights and shadows, and the gestalt. First, let's look at some general rules for sighting relationships. Sighting is a 2-part skill: sighting proportions and sighting angles. Proportions are sighted relative to each other. All angles are sighted relative to the 2 constants, vertical and horizontal. The edges of your drawing paper and format represent the vertical and horizontal constants that we see out there in the real world. All angles and proportions are sighted on the picture plane. This is a solid plane. You cannot poke through it to sight an object receding in space. Although these angles and proportions often don't conform to the real-world proportions of objects, you must draw them just as you see them, flattened on the picture plane. Remember, this is our definition of drawing. Now, let's look at the tools that will help you learn sighting: the proportion finder and the angle finder. First, pick up the proportion finder with its wrench-like jaws. Direct your gaze to a doorway. Hold the tool horizontally at arm's length with your elbow locked. Close one eye and move the lower jaw of the wrench to fit the width of the doorway. You are, quote, taking a sight on the width of the doorway. This will be your basic unit, the, quote, ruler by which you will measure the rest of the drawing. Next, turn the proportion finder to a vertical position and find the proportion of the width to height of the doorway as follows. Still holding the device at arm's length with your elbow locked and still with one eye closed, measure 1, width to 1, drop the gauge and measure again, 2, drop it again and measure the remainder, and 2/3. You have now, quote, taken a sight on the proportion of the width relative to the height of the doorway. For this particular doorway, the proportion is expressed as a ratio 1 to 2 2/3. Mind you, the doorway you are looking at may be a different proportion. Practice sighting other subjects with your proportion finder: a table length to width, a window width to height. Eventually, you'll be using your pencil to check proportions both out there and in your drawing. But while you are learning the process of sighting, use the proportion finder for sighting proportions out there and your pencil for transferring the proportions into your drawing. I'll show you how to do this during the demonstration that follows. For now, I'll just mention that shifting tools reminds you that the scale in the drawing is different from the scale out there, while the proportions are the same. Remember, sighting is a two-part skill. You have just learned the first part, sighting proportions. Your proportion finder enables you to see how big is this compared to that. Sighting angles is different. Angles are sighted relative to vertical and horizontal. Your angle finder enables you to see what is this angle relative to horizontal? What is this angle relative to vertical? Holding the angle finder in your hand, you will see that it has two transparent arms, each with a center line. Close one eye and line up one arm of the angle finder with the vertical edge of a corner. Then tilt the other arm until it lines up with the edge of the floor. Now, how do you transfer this information into a drawing? An angle sighted out there relative to one of the constants, vertical or horizontal, will be the same angle in your drawing. Therefore, once you have sighted an angle out there, using the angle finder, you can bring the device right down onto your drawing and transfer the angle directly into the drawing. You can use the center line to mark the angle. Then move the angle finder to one side and draw in the angled edge. To check the length of the angled edge, return to your proportion finder and compare the length relative to your basic unit. In this way, you will move flexibly through the drawing, checking both angles and proportions. Now that you're familiar with the tools, let's try a sighting drawing. For your drawing of an open doorway, you will need the drawing board, the large drawing pad, the extra large template, the graphite stick, several paper towels or paper napkins, drawing pencils, the pencil sharpener, the white plastic eraser, the gray kneaded eraser, the large picture plane viewfinder, the felt tip pen, your sighting tools, the proportion finder, affectionately called the wrench by my students, and the compass-like angle finder. 2 chairs, one to sit on and one to lean your drawing board on, and about 3 to 4 hours of drawing time with breaks as needed. Set yourself up to draw in front of your chosen view. You will need 2 chairs, one to sit on and one to lean your drawing board on. Starting a drawing is always more or less the same routine. First, center your extra large template on the drawing paper and run a sharpened pencil around the outside edge to make a format for your drawing using the extra large template to mark the crosshairs. Remember, the format bounds the composition, locking in your negative spaces and positive forms. For students just beginning to draw, I recommend that they always start by drawing a format. Again, using your graphite stick, tone your paper. Then, lightly draw vertical and horizontal crosshairs on the toned paper. Hold up your picture plane viewfinder and move it backward and forward, to the left and to the right, to find the best composition. That is, the one you like best. Don't hesitate to choose a composition. I have found that people completely untrained in art have very good intuitions for composition. Having found a composition you like, look carefully at what you see on the plane and choose your basic unit. Again, your basic unit should be of medium size and a shape that's not too complicated. I suggest that you use the width of the open doorway. Having chosen a basic unit and still holding up your picture plane viewfinder, draw your basic unit directly on the plastic with your felt tip marker. After you have drawn your basic unit on the picture plane, you may also wish to draw 1 or 2 of the more important edges on the plastic picture plane. But be aware that the line will be very shaky and uncertain. The essential piece of information is your basic unit, and that is really all you need. Set aside your picture plane viewfinder on a piece of white paper so that you can see what you have drawn on it. Next, you will transfer your basic unit to your paper, again using the crosshairs to place and scale up your basic unit. You are ready now to start drawing. Hold your proportion finder at arm's length with one eye closed and take a sight on your basic unit the width of the doorway. Then, turning the proportion finder to vertical, count how many widths is the height of the doorway by moving the tool along the side edge of the doorway. The proportion is a ratio, meaning a relationship. For this doorway, the ratio is 1, the width, to 2 2/3, the height. Put down the proportion finder and hold that ratio in your mind. 1 to 2 2/3. Then pick up your pencil and turn to your drawing, where you have established your basic unit, the width of the doorway. Now, using your pencil, measure the width of the doorway in your drawing. This is your 1, your basic unit in the drawing. Say to yourself, 1, the width, then turn the pencil vertically and count off to 1, 2, and 2/3, moving the pencil down what will be the side of the doorway. Make a mark at 2 2/3 and then draw in the side of the doorway. Now, let's work with the angle finder. Choose an angle to sight. Hold your angle finder so that one arm is vertical and swing the other arm to line up with the angle you are sighting. Then, without moving the position of the arms, bring the angle finder down to your drawing. Make sure the vertical arm is vertical, that is, parallel with the edge of your format, and draw in the angle. Again, you will fit the pieces of your drawing together like a fascinating puzzle. Work from part to adjacent part, always checking the relationship of each new part to the parts already drawn. Be sure to use negative spaces as an important part of your drawing. Once you have completed the main parts of the drawing, you can focus on lights and shadows. Squinting your eyes a bit will blur the details and allow you to see large shapes of lighted areas and shadowed areas. Again, using your new sighting skills, you can erase out the shapes of the lights and use your pencil to darken in the shapes of the shadows. These shapes are sighted in exactly the same way as you have sighted the other parts of the drawing. What is the angle of that shadow relative to horizontal? How wide is that streak of light relative to the width of the doorway? If any part of the drawing seems off or, quote, out of drawing, as such errors are called, check the troublesome area by refinding your chosen composition. With your plastic picture plane viewfinder, match up your basic unit again with the width of the doorway out there. Look at the image on the plane, with one eye closed, of course, and alternately glance down at your drawing to double-check angles and proportions. Make any corrections that seem reasonably easy to make. Remember, drawing is always an approximation, not photography. Stop the video and begin your sighting drawing. Congratulations! You have just accomplished a drawing that many advanced art students would find daunting, if not impossible. Let's see how our two students did with this lesson. Laura chose a complicated view and at first had some difficulty because she kept forgetting to close one eye to flatten the view on the plane. Soon, however, she reminded herself to stay on the plane and ended with this fine drawing. Note that the scene is very ordinary, but Laura's drawing is lovely and we feel drawn to the open, mysterious doorway. I often feel that subject matter is the least important aspect of drawing. Any ordinary subject, lovingly observed, can result in a wonderful drawing. Mark chose a much simpler view, but as you see, simple views make good drawings too. Mark's sighting of the angles is excellent, but there's a little wobble at the end of the counter that he could easily correct. In time, you will discard all of the sighting tools and use only your pencil for sighting both angles and proportions. This makes drawing wonderfully simple, requiring only paper, a pencil, and some time to draw. Anything can be a subject for drawing. Anything from old shoes to a crowded street scene to the Grand Canyon. In your next lesson, you will integrate everything you've learned so far in drawing your first real portrait. In this lesson, you'll do your first drawing of a person using all of the skills you've learned so far. You will need to find a model, which is not always easy. Many people strenuously object to sitting perfectly still for any period of time. One solution is to draw someone who is reading or watching television. Another possibility is to catch someone sleeping. In portrait drawing, artists have traditionally posed their models in one of three views. Full face. The model faces the artist directly, with both sides of the model's face fully visible to the artist. Profile. The model faces left or right, and only one side of the face is visible to the artist. Three-quarter view. The model makes a half turn left or right, and 3/4 of the face is visible to the artist. That is 1/2 plus 1/4. In this lesson, you will be drawing a profile portrait. The most frequent error made by beginners in drawing the human head is the chopped off skull error. For reasons that are still unclear, beginning students apparently see the top half of the head as smaller than it actually is. Perhaps this is because we naturally pay more attention to people's features, therefore they seem larger. So you cannot rely on what you think you see. You must take sights on your model using your proportion finder. Then you must trust your own sightings. This is really the hardest part. These proportions will help avoid this misperception. From eye level to chin equals eye level to the topmost curve of the head. Eye level to chin equals back of the eye to the back of the ear. As you begin your drawing, make sure to avoid enlarging the features relative to the skull. Here's what you'll need for your profile portrait. The large drawing pad, the drawing board, drawing pencils, the pencil sharpener, the white plastic eraser, the gray kneaded eraser, the graphite stick, the small or large picture plane viewfinder, the felt tip pen, the extra large template, the angle finder, the proportion finder, 2 chairs, one to sit on and one to lean your drawing board on, a small table on which to put your tools and materials. Most important, you'll need a model, someone who will pose for you in profile view, and about 1 to 2 hours of uninterrupted time. As always, start by drawing a format using your extra large template. Lightly tone your paper, then add the crosshairs. Pose your model in profile view. Sit as close to your model as possible. Next, use your picture plane viewfinder to compose your drawing. Close one eye and hold up the viewfinder, moving it backward and forward until the head of your model is placed pleasingly within the format. That is, not too crowded on any edge and with enough of the neck and shoulders to provide support for the head. Now that you have decided on your composition, hold the viewfinder as steadily as possible and choose a basic unit, a convenient size and shape to guide proportions as you draw. The span from the model's eye level to the bottom of the chin is a good basic unit. You, however, may prefer to use another basic unit, perhaps the length of the nose or the span from the bottom of the nose to the bottom of the chin. Next, mark the top and bottom of your basic unit with your felt tip marker directly on the picture plane. Then, transfer your basic unit to your drawing paper using the crosshairs to enable you to scale up the unit. At this point, you can begin to draw, confident that you will end up with the composition you have so carefully chosen. Use the negative space in front of the profile and, rather than drawing the profile, draw the edge of that negative shape. Then, check the angle of the nose relative to horizontal by using your angle finder. Place the eye in relation to the innermost curve of the bridge of the nose, checking the angle of the eyelid relative to horizontal. Use the shape under the nostril as a negative shape. Check the angle of the center line of the mouth. This is the only true edge of the mouth. The upper and lower contours only mark a color change. This color change boundary should be drawn lightly. Note that in profile, the angle of the center line of the mouth, the true edge, often descends relative to horizontal. Don't hesitate to draw this angle just as you see it. Using the proportion finder set at your basic unit, eye level to chin, find the width to the back of the head, which in this case is 1 to 1 1/4, measured from the back of the eye. Next, find the topmost curve of the head. Again, using your proportion finder set to your basic unit, check the relationship of eye level to chin to eye level to the topmost curve of the head. For this model, this relationship is 1 to 1. To get these proportions into your drawing, use your pencil to measure the basic unit in your drawing. And then repeat those ratios, 1 to 1 1/4, and make a mark. Then 1 to 1 to the topmost curve of the head and make a mark. Then, using negative spaces around the head, begin drawing the contour of the head. Now, with your pencil held vertically, bound the negative space at the back of the neck. Next, find the innermost curve of the chin, where the neck starts, by checking that point vertically against the back of the eye. Then, use the angle finder to find the front of the neck. At this point, you can, if you choose, erase out the ground around the head. Sight the location of the top of the ear by holding your pencil horizontally and checking the top of the ear in relationship to the center of the eye. Repeat this sighting movement to locate the bottom of the ear in relationship to the mouth. These relationships will vary from model to model. Then draw the contour of the ear using the shape of the negative space behind the ear. Drawing hair is largely a light shadow process. What you want not to do is to draw quick, glib symbols of hairs. It really isn't necessary to draw every hair and every curl. What your viewer wants is for you to express the character of the hair, especially the hair closest to the face. Given enough clues, the viewer can extrapolate and in fact enjoys extrapolating the general texture and nature of the hair. To draw your model's hair, then, gaze at it with your eyes squinted to obscure details and to see where the larger highlights lie and where the larger shadows fall. Notice in particular the characteristics of the hair, wordlessly, of course. Begin to draw the hair in some detail where the hair meets the face, transcribing the light shadow patterns and the direction of angles and curves in various segments of the hair. You may decide to add some fine details, even drawing some of the individual hairs, but only those you really see. As in your previous drawings, you will want to develop some of the light shadow patterns by erasing out the large shapes of light falling on the face and darkening in the shadows. Finally, complete your profile portrait by drawing the neck and shoulders, which provide a support for the head. The amount of detail of clothing is another aesthetic choice with no strict guidelines. The major aim is to provide enough detail to make the drawing of the clothing harmonious with the drawing of the head. Stop the video and begin your profile portrait. Congratulations on drawing your first profile portrait. I feel sure you're now using the first 3 basic perceptual skills of drawing with some confidence: edges, spaces, and relationships of angles and proportions. Now let's look at our 2 students' profile portraits. Laura drew this lovely profile portrait of a fellow student. The proportions are very good. Check the size and placement of the ear. Very convincing. Also, Laura retained strong negative spaces. She was really seeing the shapes of the spaces in front of the profile, around the hat, and the back of the neck. By leaving a border of the ground at the edges, the drawing seems nicely framed. Students are very good at making these personal choices. This time, I'm sure you can recognize Mark's style of drawing: soft, strong edges and smooth tones. This is a very good likeness of his model, a fellow student. Negative space in front of the profile is especially fine, and the proportions are very good. No chopped off skull. The hair is a bit stylized, and Mark wants more 3-dimensionality in his drawing. In the next lesson, we'll focus on the 4th skill, lights and shadows. You'll be drawing your self-portrait, a good subject for learning this skill. We have arrived at the last lesson, where we will explore the 4th basic skill of drawing, lights and shadows. Let's review one last time all 5 basic skills. Remember, you will use all of these skills in nearly every drawing. Let's look at how they work together in a single drawing. The perception of edges, usually called line or contour drawing. The perception of spaces, in drawing called negative spaces. The perception of relationships, of angles and proportions. The perception of lights and shadows, often called shading. And the perception of the whole, that is, the gestalt, the thingness of the thing. After the rigors of perspective and proportion, joy returns to drawing with the skill of lights and shadows. This skill adds immensely to the illusion of 3-dimensionality on the 2-dimensional drawing paper. You are aware of lights and shadows in everyday life, but because lights and shadows change constantly as we move around, or as the light source changes, they are not observed at fully conscious L-mode level. We don't name shadows. We don't say, here is a cheek shadow, there is an under the chin shadow. To illustrate for yourself how we interpret rather than see lights and shadows, look at Gustave Courbet's self-portrait. Upside down, the drawing looks simply like a pattern of dark and light areas. Now, here is Courbet's self-portrait right side up. Instantly, the light-shadow pattern seems to change and, in a strange way, disappear into the 3-dimensional shape of the head. This is another of the many paradoxes of drawing. By drawing the shapes of the light and shadow areas just as you perceive them, someone looking at your drawing will not notice those shapes. Instead, the viewer will wonder how you were able to make your subject so real, meaning three-dimensional. Most important in drawing portraits is to avoid the symbol system we discussed in an earlier lesson. Lights and shadows will help you with this. Instead of drawing a nose, you should simply draw the shapes of the lights and shadows that make up the nose. Like magic, the nose will appear. The following are some proportions that will help you in completing a realistic portrait. The eye level line, which passes through the inside corners of the eyes, is halfway between the bottom of the chin and the top of the skull. Since this is an almost invariant proportion for human heads, it should be committed to memory. The space between the eyes is approximately the width of one eye. Any variations will be very small, no more than a 1/4 inch in a life-size portrait head. The length of the nose does vary quite a bit from face to face. There is no general proportion. If you imagine an inverted triangle with the outside corners at the outside corners of the eyes and the point at the bottom edge of the nose, the shape of that inverted triangle will help you to correctly see the length of the nose. The outside edges of the nose are directly under the inside corners of the eyes. This proportion varies from face to face, but again, the variation is perhaps 1/8, 1/4, 1/3 of an inch. The outside corners of the mouth fall approximately under the pupils of the eyes. This proportion also varies slightly from face to face. The tops of the ears fall approximately at, or slightly above, the eye level line. The bottoms of the ears are approximately at the upper lip. For your drawing, you will need the drawing board, the large drawing pad, the extra large template, drawing pencils 4B and 6B, the pencil sharpener, the white plastic eraser, the gray kneaded eraser, the mirror, drafting tape to tape your mirror to the wall, the felt tip pen, the graphite stick, paper towels or paper napkins, the angle finder, the proportion finder, a floor lamp or a clip-on light to illuminate one side of your head, a hat, scarf, or headdress if that idea appeals to you, the red gel, and about 2 hours of uninterrupted time. Getting set to draw is always the same procedure. First, you decide what you will draw: a still life, a landscape, a model, in this instance, a self-portrait. Next, you decide on the shape and size of format. For this drawing, use your extra large template. Next, prepare your drawing paper with a ground. Lightly draw in your crosshairs. Now you are set to draw. Once you are seated, you will lean your drawing board against the wall and adjust the mirror taped on the wall so that you can comfortably see your image. Adjust the lamp and test out various poses by turning to the left or right, raising or lowering your head, adjusting your hat or headdress, until you see in the mirror a composition in lights and shadows that you like. Note that the mirror becomes the picture plane in self-portrait drawing. The red gel is a great help in seeing yourself objectively. Use it to cover your mirror, Rub it onto the mirror with a piece of cloth. Static electricity will cause the gel to stick to the mirror. The gel masks out fine details and allows you to see the large shapes of lights and shadows. Keep the gel on until you are ready to work with smaller shapes of lights and shadows and finishing details. Decide whether to draw a full face view or a 3/4 view, and decide which way you will turn, left or right, if you choose the 3/4 view. You will gaze at your reflection in the mirror, searching for negative spaces, interesting edges, shapes of lights and shadows. Try to suppress language entirely, particularly verbal criticism of face and features. This is not easy to do because this is a new use of a mirror, not for checking or correcting, but to reflect an image in an almost impersonal way. Try to regard yourself the way you would regard a still life setup or a photograph of a stranger. You are now ready to choose a basic unit, transfer it, and begin to draw. There are many ways to proceed from this point. I'll show you my way, but you may choose an entirely different way. I suggest that you watch the complete demonstration and then begin to draw. First, compose your drawing using your mirror as your picture plane. Then, choose a basic unit. I generally use eye level to chin. You may prefer to start your drawing another way, perhaps using the length of the nose as your basic unit. You must, however, be sure to mark the top and bottom of your basic unit, making the marks directly on the mirror or on the red gel. You might also make a mark for the top of your head to help you avoid the chopped off skull error. The next step, of course, is to transfer your basic unit to your drawing paper with its crosshairs and toned ground. Next, find the large lighted shapes and note where they are located relative to your basic unit and to the crosshairs. Begin your drawing by erasing out the largest lighted shapes, like this. For the moment, ignore any small forms or edges. Right now, try to see only the large lights and shadows. Then erase out the ground around the head, leaving the toned ground as the middle value of the drawing. I'm sure you've noticed that I have said nothing about eyes, nose, or mouth up to this point. If you can resist the impulse to draw the features and allow them to, quote, come out of the light shadow pattern, you will be able to exploit the full power of this kind of drawing. Rather than drawing the eyes, for example, try this. Rub your 6B pencil on a scrap of paper and rub your forefinger over the graphite. Then, carefully checking in the mirror for the location of the eyes relative to the light shapes you have erased out, rub your graphite-coated fingertip where your eyes should be in the drawing. Suddenly, you will be able to, quote, see the eyes, and you need only to reinforce that ghostly perception. Now that you have your drawing well started, with the major light and dark areas blocked in, you can start working up the drawing by focusing on details of edges, spaces, relationships, and the smaller lights and shadows. Stop the video and begin your self-portrait. Congratulations! Again, you have accomplished one of the most difficult drawings. Let's look one last time at both the pre- and post-instruction self-portraits of our two students. Laura has made a stunning advance, and she was particularly thrilled with her drawing. Of course, we still find her pre-instruction drawing charming in its childlike directness. But we have to remember that Laura was yearning to make things look real. Her post-instruction drawing is a very good likeness, and unlike her pre-instruction self-portrait, her personality with her inward thoughtfulness shines through. She used lights and shadows very effectively to show the three-dimensionality of the head and the hair. Looking at Mark's before and after drawings, it's hard to believe that only 5 days have passed. It almost seems that two different people have done the two drawings. Mark has achieved at last the three-dimensionality he wanted, while still retaining his personal style of drawing. His self-portrait, like Laura's, is an excellent likeness, and the expression is psychologically interesting and complex. Now, take out your first self-portrait and compare it with your final self-portrait. I hope you'll see the same wonderful improvement in your drawing skills as you saw in the students' work. You may be wondering whether our two students are typical or specially chosen. They are really typical. We always have a wide range of ages and occupations. My oldest student was 86, and she learned as rapidly as the younger students. My youngest student was a very bright 9-year-old who also did remarkably well. I often have students who are already working in art and design, and even quite a number of art teachers who need to gain or repair their basic drawing skills. But most of our students are like Laura and Mark, people who simply have a yearning to learn to draw. Perhaps you are included in that group. Whatever your reason for taking this workshop, I want to congratulate you for completing the lessons and learning these basic drawing skills. Of course, as with any other newly learned skill, you must practice, practice, practice. I recommend that you buy a little sketchbook and try to draw something every day, even for a few minutes. This will keep the skills alive and growing, and will keep you alert to subject matter all around. It's good practice and will start you on a lifetime of seeing things differently and seeing how beautiful our world is. In time, you will acquire 2 additional skills: drawing from memory and drawing from imagined images. These additional skills require that the 5 basic skills be in place. For example, in drawing from memory, you call up a remembered image, say your mother's face, and seeing it in your mind's eye, draw it on paper. Or you imagine something that never existed, say a fire-breathing dragon. Then you see it again in your mind's eye and draw it. Through drawing, you will come to know your 2 minds, L mode and R mode, and their capabilities. R mode in particular can help in creative thinking and problem solving because it can see the whole problem and its parts. It can look for what is missing and what the organizing principle is that will solve a problem. Lastly, if it's at all possible, teach someone else to draw. In this way, this gift you have given yourself will be passed on to someone else. As an extra bonus, teaching basic drawing skills will help to put this new learning into permanent memory. Remember, in drawing, you are always seeking yourself, your vision, your response to things, places, and people. Then, paradoxically, someone viewing your drawings will see what you have drawn through your eyes and will see as you have seen. Again, you will have expressed yourself creatively. I wish you a lifetime of happy drawing.
All right, we did it.